Hello students, welcome to our latest update program. In today's session, we'll talk about the SHANTI Bill in detail because once this bill is passed and it becomes a law, it is going to bring in some major changes in the nuclear energy sector of India. So we will discuss the key provisions of this bill. We will see why was there a need to introduce this bill in the first place. And we'll also look at some core concerns regarding this bill. So let's get started. SHANTI or Sustainable Harnessing and Advancement of Nuclear Energy for Transforming India. This bill has been passed by the Lok Sabha and now this is with the Rajya Sabha. Once the Rajya Sabha also passes this, it will become a law, and once this law is enacted, it is going to bring in some major changes in the nuclear energy sector of India. So what are some key provisions of this bill? The most important change that it is talking about is the element of privatization. Privatization in the nuclear energy sector. Till now, we know that there was a monopoly of NPCIL. Nuclear Power Corporation of India had the monopoly in this sector. All the nuclear power plants in India, they are 100% owned by the government of India. There was no privatization till now. But what is this bill saying? This bill is suggesting that there is going to be an element of private and joint venture participation, which means that now the private companies, both Indian and foreign, both Indian and foreign companies will be able to build, own, operate and decommission nuclear power plants in India subject to licensing. If they are able to get a license to do that, they can come and they can build and operate these nuclear power plants in India. Earlier, this was not allowed, but now with this bill is passed, this privatization is going to be allowed. However, the government has still kept certain strategic areas, core areas with itself, like fuel enrichment. Fuel enrichment will still remain with the government, and radioactive waste management will also remain with the government. But largely these private players will be allowed to run these nuclear power plants, to build and operate these nuclear power plants in India. So this was not the case earlier, but this will happen, and this is the major or the most important, one of the most important provisions of this bill. And how is that going to happen? Because the existing laws are going to be replaced. We had the Atomic Energy Act of 1962. This act basically prohibited privatization in the nuclear energy sector. So this act is going to be replaced with SHANTI, and the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act of 2010, which used to fix the liability, the accountability in case of nuclear accidents. This is also going to be replaced with SHANTI, because the liability is going to be changed. For example, earlier what used to happen in the previous act, in the act of 2010, in case of a nuclear accident, the liability was to be shared between the operator and even by the supplier if it was verified, if it was it was established that the supplier had supplied a faulty equipment and that faulty equipment led to that nuclear accident. In that case, certain liability could also have been shifted on the supplier. Operator of the plant definitely will have to take the responsibility, bear the compensation charges, and the supplier could also have to do that in case it was established that a faulty equipment led to this accident. So earlier this responsibility was the liability, this was on the operator as well as on the supplier as well at times. Now under SHANTI, what's going to happen? The sole responsibility is going to be on the operator only. Only the operator is going to be responsible for any nuclear accidents, which means that the supplier has been completely moved out of the liability ambit. No supplier liability. No supplier liability. Only the operator is going to be responsible for any nuclear accident. And to give certain relief to these operators, because now supplier is not going to bear any cost, so all the cost will have to be borne by the operator. To give certain relief to the operator, the maximum liability has been capped a maximum liability cap has been introduced of 3000 CR only. So what is going to change? A, supplier will have no liability. B, operator only is going to have liability, but the operator's maximum liability also has been capped as at 3000 CR. But if you notice, 3000 CR is not enough when we talk about covering the damages that are caused by a nuclear accident. 3000 CR is nothing. Then who is going to pay the additional amount? It is the Government of India. Government of India is going to pay all the cost over and above to 3000 CR, and for this it is going to establish a special fund, and money is going to be taken out from that fund to basically compensate for all the losses caused due to a nuclear accident. So earlier the supplier was also liable, now the supplier is not going to be liable. So the government's backing over here is that because the supplier was liable, many a times these foreign investors, they lost their confidence in investing in the Indian markets because they knew that if something went wrong and their fault was established, that there was a faulty equipment involved that was supplied, they also will have to bear compensation. So they were not feeling that motivated, they were not encouraged or confident enough to basically enter the Indian markets. So in order to remove that obstacle, the government felt that there was a need to completely do away with the supplier liability. However, there are some concerns regarding this which we will talk about in the later part of the video. But for now, please understand that the liability from the suppliers has completely been removed. It is only the operator's liability, and for operators also there is a cap that has been fixed at 3000 CR. Next, a statutory status will be given to the nuclear regulator. Who's our nuclear regulator? AERB, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. There is going to be a statutory backing to this. So it's going to be answerable to the Parliament of India. So stronger regulation, stronger enforcement is going to take place, and a more transparent enforcement is also going to take place. Now there is a statutory backing to our nuclear regulator. Then a dedicated atomic disputes tribunal will also be created. And with this bill, the government is basically aiming at a facilitation or a faster adoption of newer technology, advanced nuclear technology. So government under its nuclear energy mission is eyeing on getting some advanced nuclear technology in India, like the small modular reactors, like our small modular reactors. And with the introduction of private players in this sector, the government is aiming at a faster adoption of this newer technology. So if you look at this diagram, we have our large conventional reactors which have a capacity of 700 plus megawatts. They are very big, they are very huge. In comparison to these large conventional reactors, we have small modular reactors. As the name suggests, they are very small, and at the same time they can basically be assembled at the location itself. It's very easy to assemble them also, it's very easy to transport them, it's very easy to assemble them at the location, and they too have a capacity of up to 300 megawatts. So this is the advanced nuclear technology. In fact, the government in this year's budget also has certain amount that's earmarked for developing small modular reactors itself. So the government basically wants that by 2047 we have these technologies, these indigenous technologies, and at the same time we have a faster adoption of the newer technology, and for that it felt that the privatization of this is going to help in this adoption. So these are some key provisions of this bill. Now if we talk about the need for this introduction, why exactly was there a need to bring about this reform in our nuclear governance? So if I talk about the need over here, we have a very ambitious target in terms of our nuclear capacity. So we wish to have a nuclear capacity of 100 gigawatts by 2047. Nuclear capacity of 100 gigawatts by 2047. And where are we at the moment? The current capacity is somewhere around 8 gigawatts only. So from 8 gigawatts, we want to move to 100 gigawatts. So this gap is huge. We need to bridge this gap. So in order to bridge this gap, what is required? More faster adoption of technology, newer technology, and at the same time, funds. There is a large funding gap also. So for the government alone to basically get to this target that from 8 we want to go to 100 gigawatts, for the government alone to arrange all these funds or to arrange the adoption of this newer technology, it can get difficult. That is why the government was of the vision that certain private players should also be allowed in this sector, where they can get in more funds, they can get in newer technologies, and finally we can have this goal achieved of 100 gigawatts of nuclear capacity. But there are certain concerns that we need to be mindful of. We are opening it for the private players, but at the same time, we need to be mindful of certain things. Like the first contention was around removing the supplier liability. So I just told you that the government's opinion over here was that these foreign investors, they were not feeling confident enough to invest in the Indian markets because they knew that if something went wrong, they also will have to bear the compensation for that. But by removing the supplier liability, the investors are going to feel confident. Great. But it is going to undermine our polluter pays principle. Correct? If there is a faulty equipment that has been involved, but these people are of the view, the investors are of the view that even if anything goes wrong, we definitely are not going to be liable for anything. It can give rise to irrational decisions, it can give rise to irresponsible decisions, and the polluter pays principle is going to be undermined. So we need to be mindful that while we are taking care of the foreign investors' need, while we want to get in more funds, at the same time we also need to be mindful that we are not playing with this principle, we are not undermining the polluter pays principle, because we have even capped the limit to 3000 CR, and 3000 CR is not a great amount when it comes to covering all these damages caused by a nuclear accident. So even for this, what needs to be done as a way forward, time and again we need to periodically be reviewing this amount. We need to review this amount, we need to keep on indexing it for inflation. We cannot just fix it forever, that 3000 CR is going to be forever. We need to be mindful that we are not undermining our polluter pays principle. We need to have a proper regulatory framework and oversight framework for everything. And at the same time, we also need to be periodically reviewing this amount also, this maximum cap also, and index it for inflation. So that was all for this video. Now this bill is with the Rajya Sabha. Let's see what happens next. Thank you for watching the video. Now let us look at a practice question for prelims. With reference to the Shanti Bill 2025, consider the following statements. 1. The bill allows private companies to set up and operate nuclear power plants in India subject to licensing. 2. The bill completely removes the liability of nuclear plant operators in case of a nuclear accident. 3. The bill caps the maximum liability of nuclear operators and removes mandatory supplier liability. 4. The bill aims to support India's target of achieving about 100 gigawatts of nuclear power capacity by 2047. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? A. 1 and 2 only. B. 2 and 3 only. C. 1, 3 and 4 only. Or D. 1, 2 and 3 only. Please attempt this question and provide your answers in the comment section. Thank you for watching.
Introducing Drishti IAS Everyday Wear, the casual jacket and the polo neck t-shirt, perfect for everyday and casual wear. Shop now on the Drishti Learning app and Flipkart. Buy link in the description.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.